This GeekWire podcast is brought to you by BECU. Stay tuned to the break as Brian Westbrook interviews BECU's Stacy Black for today's Money Hack about social media trends like loud budgeting. And for more money hacks, check out geekwire.com/BECU.
By thinking about data in a different way, we actually showed that you could train a model better than other models by using 1/10,000th of the data. 1/10,000th. The comparison was with a model that was using 6 billion data points versus us using 700,000. And to me, these are great points because that opens up the door to more and more people to start playing in this game, making it more accessible. And the minute you actually unlock these barriers, I think that's the moment that you see innovations just flourish at a pace that we've never observed before. And those pieces are the pieces that are making us very, very confident that open source will win this game. Nothing can outpace it.
Welcome to GeekWire. From GeekWire.com in Seattle, I'm Todd Bishop. We are coming to you from Seattle, where we get to report each day on what's happening around us in business, technology, and innovation. What happens here matters everywhere, and every week on this show, we get to talk about some of the most interesting and important stories and trends in the news. This week, I'm coming to you not only from Seattle, but from the banks of Lake Union and the home of the Allen Institute for AI, because I'm joined this week by Ali Farhadi, CEO of the Allen Institute for AI. Ali, it's great to have you here.
Thank you for stopping by, Todd. Excited to have a conversation on AI.
Well, I'm excited to have this conversation too. Around the middle of this week, I was thinking, so much has happened over the past few weeks in this realm. And I was thinking, who could put this into perspective for me? So I reached out and asked to be able to speak with you, and I'm really excited to talk with you. So it has been a very eventful few weeks in artificial intelligence. DeepSeek, OpenAI, Elon Musk making a bid for OpenAI, Stargate, Microsoft. And in the midst of all this, AI too, you've had some significant news of your own. And through all this, we've really seen a heightened focus on what it takes to train AI models and the importance of open source AI, which is right in your wheelhouse. Can you just give me your take on what's happened in the last few weeks?
Indeed, it's been a phenomenal few weeks. I think part of it is a natural pace within which AI is evolving, and it's kind of expected given the amount of resources being poured into this, the kind of talent that's all focused in AI. We should just get comfortable with this notion that there's going to be something new every week. And as a result of that, part of our job is to ground everybody for every release. That's not the end of the world. That's not going to solve everything. It's a release after a release after a release. And most of these releases, including ours, are gonna be sort of the news of the day or of the week, and then they're gonna fade down. So first lesson that we'll learn, and we try to also educate others on, is that when you see these, do not overreact. Understand the release, understand the technical implications. These are complex systems. There are so many different ways that these releases can be interpreted. Talk to experts, develop a sense before reacting. But it's been a phenomenal week, few weeks actually. It's hard to say when it started. Some people would say that December-ish or Christmas time, but it's been like that for a while, I would argue. Even in early December, we had the whole space have seen so many releases. It's been a phenomenal fast-paced space. Sometimes it's even hard to watch, let alone digest and then innovate on top.
So let's talk about DeepSeek in particular, if you don't mind starting there, because when I saw the DeepSeek news, the announcement, I have to tell you, my first thought was, I've seen these things before. This focus on open source AI, this focus on efficiency in model training. And the place that I had seen them was in a lot of the AI2 releases. And I love it. We get the seaplanes and the ambiance here. It's perfect. But were you tempted to look at that and say, you were envious of the attention they were getting, or that's a signal that you've been right all along? Like, where do you go on that spectrum?
Yeah, I think DeepSeek was there's different ways to think about it. First of all, it's a phenomenal piece of engineering work. Those folks have done a great job in various different engineering aspects of this. And It's a good model. It's a decent model. There are interesting bits and pieces about the efficiency. I'm very happy that they also released a detailed write-up with the model release, not just a model which is going to be great, but to us was the moment to celebrate. This is what open source means, and this is what open brings us: is you build something, I build on top of your thing, and then you build on top of mine, and you move forward. And if you start digesting what DeepSeek's main significant gains are coming from, is basically grabbing this piece from here, grabbing the other piece from somewhere else, scale them up, do the right engineering, and put a great model out there. All in all, I think we're celebrating this moment as a proof point that open source will win. Independent of how much money you pour into the closed systems, once you have global ecosystem of innovators, it's A, hard to stop, B, hard to outpace.
So for people who are not familiar with AI2, the Allen Institute for Artificial Intelligence, which you've led for about 20 months, if I'm counting right, and you were here previously, and you had one of the first startups to spin out of AI2 at the time, Xnor AI, and you went on to lead machine learning at Apple. Of course, you're also a computer science professor at the Allen School of Computer Science and Engineering at the University of Washington. AI2 is really about AI for the common good. It's a nonprofit. And you have been championing this open source AI movement for many, many years at AI2. It strikes me that it might be helpful to do a little bit of an AI2 101.
So when you think about the AI stack, it starts with data, oftentimes pre-training data. These are larger scale data sets that you need to train these models. Then there is a whole gamut of training algorithms, hacks and tricks that you do to be able to train these models and massage your data into the model. Then once you pre-train a model and you declare that you're done, then the whole story on post-training starts. So over the last year, we've been opening up different components of these pipelines, one after the other. Starting from Dolmo release, at the time that we released this was the biggest openly available and open source data set for pre-training. It had 3 trillion tokens back in the time. And it opened up a whole new class of approaches on those domains, and more data sets came after that.
And so somebody out there can say, hey, here's this curated data set that they could take because it's open and use it to train their own model.
That's exactly what happened. Then after Dolmo came Olmo. Olmo was a class of pre-trained model. This is using Dolmo and other data set to be able to train a base model. And we released Olmo at different sizes over the course of the year with various different properties. Then once we've done that, we've done Molmo, which is also a class of multimodal models and different variants of that. And then post-training, which comes with Tulu and instruction tuning, which is now talking about grabbing a pre-trained model and tune it to be able to do certain tasks.
I want to go back quickly to Molmo because that one, as you said, is the multimodal open language model. And just as an example, when that release came out, I was able to take a picture of my refrigerator and ask it to help me find, I think, the peanut butter or the ketchup or something like that. So it's using an additional form of media there in terms of photos, not just language.
Exactly.
Yeah. That is the family.
That's the family of all the model releases that we've had during the year. And at this point, we've basically opened up every piece of the puzzle, enabling people to start from scratch, from data, or from a base model, or from an instruction-tuned model, or from a fully fine-tuned model as one of those Tulu models.
So in that context, were there things that you were able to learn from DeepSeek technically, or even just from the way that they put things out into the world?
Absolutely. There are so many different things that we are learning from DeepSeek. The same way DeepSeek learned from our releases. I think RLVR, as part of Tulu 3 that came a few months before DeepSeek results, was a great example that way of thinking about RL actually went to their way and they scaled up. And in return, we are also learning about how they approach the problem. And that's the power of being open. In addition to that, I think open these days is an overloaded term. We have to be very careful about what is open, what is not. The fact that we're seeing so much of open washing, to me, is a great example of others also realizing open is important. There are models that are just an API calls. There are models that are trained behind closed doors with unknown data, with unknown algorithms, but the model weights are open, which is a great step. And then there are models that are truly open, where you could actually start understanding them, building on top of them, and innovating on top of them. To us, we subscribe to the extreme. We are after truly open, and we argue that without that, we're crippling AI innovation. And also, we're putting ceilings on what AI could do for other disciplines: health, science, planet.
So just to make sure I'm following along, reinforcement learning is RL. RLVR, I'm trying to remember which one that one is.
So RLVR is the algorithm that sort of introduced as part of Tool 3 package. This is reinforcement learning with verifiable rewards. It simplified the way you could actually use RL for tuning or post-training pre-trained models. It simplified the whole process significantly, but also it showed significant improvements. And that's sort of the essence of what went into DeepSeek RL.
And when you talk about open washing, that's really interesting, because it's the sign that open source AI is popular and seen as trendy and important, but at the same time, not everything is truly open source. How are you defining open source these days?
To me, it's a clear definition. So looking back at the history of software and when initial conversations around open source software came about, the spirit was, I need to understand what you did to the extent that I could change it, I could fork it, I should be able to fork it halfway, a third of a way, I should be able to grab the final product, and I should be able to build on top of it. If that principle doesn't exist, to me, these are not truly open. So if you just train a model behind closed door and release the model weights, 90% of the pipeline is actually opaque to me. How could I build on top of that? How could I change it? And that's a phenomenon that actually people who are using these models in practice in industry are actually observing, is that they're limited in how much they could change these models to their way. Yes, you could actually fine-tune, but there's so much you could fine-tune before you start seeing capability loss, forgetting, and all of those. And without that element of opening up the rest of the stack, people who are using it are very, very limited to the design decisions that you made at the time of training. Many of them are not reversible. And that's just a critical element. To us, open source first of all, open source is a definition that came up for software. The direct application of that to AI is a little broken, because we have models, we have data, we have code, we have training algorithm, we have parameters. But the principle that we're abiding by is that you should be able to grab this, change it halfway, change it a third of a way, or just look at it and learn and do your own business. And all of those things should be available to you. There's this element, and there's licensing element, which is a whole different element of conversation. And without these elements, we're just slowing down the pace of innovation in AI. And I think one of the greatest lessons, in my opinion, as we are watching this whole evolution, is if US wants to maintain its edge, arguing that there still exists an edge, we have only one way, and that is just promote open approaches, promote open source solutions. Because no matter how much dollars you're investing in an ecosystem, without a communal global efforts, you're not going to be as fast.
What are the implications of that for existing proprietary models, things like GPT-4? I mean, can this future of open source AI exist in a silo on its own if some of the primary models in the industry are closed, like, ironically, OpenAI's GPT-4?
Yeah, so the way I think about this is that we would have a whole gamut of models, as we are already having that. There are a large number of models. Each of them would have its own characteristics. And people get to decide which one they want to use, depends on how sensitive they are or not. If you're doing something that matters, if you're doing something that's sensitive, you're making decisions that impacts important things, then you have to question yourself, can I use a closed model or not? And we're seeing that as we're talking to different people in the industry, that they're refraining from, they're not actually touching these old closed models with their own sensitive data, despite the fact that they're private, kept in an exclave, etc. Still, it's data transfer that worries people. And I believe in the future where there's going to be a whole spectrum of models of different flavors, different kinds. As things progress, we see more and more models.
This is great. We are talking with Ali Farhadi. He is the CEO of the Allen Institute for AI, and we will be right back with more. I want to talk about the release that you had this past week, which was notable in its own right, and we'll do that after we come back. This GeekWire podcast is brought to you by BECU. Stay tuned as Brian Westbrook interviews BECU's Stacy Black for today's Money Hack about social media trends like loud budgeting. And for more money hacks, check out geekwire.com/BECU.
Are you a fan of the latest social media trends? Have you heard of financial advice from the comment section? How about loud budgeting? Stacy Black, lead financial educator with BECU, is here with me now. What is loud budgeting?
Loud budgeting really helps remove the shame when it comes to talking about finances. When I was younger, we never talked about money.
Yeah.
And now it's all about being loud and proud. Like, I am saving for my financial goals in the future. I want to buy a house. So it's being proud about that and letting people know that you could buy whatever you want, but you're choosing not to because you have financial goals in the future.
So it's kind of pivoting that shame around money and talking about money into ways that really just make you proud of it and give you something to look forward to. We'll talk about that and more, social media hacks and social media tips and tricks on saving money and looking forward to your financial goals. That's all on Money Hacks at geekwire.com/BECU.
Listen to the full interview and find more episodes of Money Hacks at geekwire.com/BECU and find more information at becu.org. All right, welcome back. It's Todd Bishop. I'm on location this week at the Allen Institute for AI in Seattle. My guest is Ali Farhadi. He is the CEO. We've been talking about this eventful few months, really, in artificial intelligence. And AI2, the Allen Institute for AI, you've had some big releases of your own. And in fact, just this past week, AI2 released its first on-device AI app. It's a new version of Olmo E, which is a model that can run offline on Apple iOS devices. And this promises new levels of privacy and security. First off, why was this an important thing for you to do as AI2?
As you think about the space of all possible solutions that people would use these kind of recent technologies on, there is a whole class of solutions who cannot run on the cloud. They would never get comfortable with their data being somewhere else, their latency issues, their connectivity issues, their reaction time or latency concerns. As a result, we've been thinking that when we released Olmo E, the first version of it, we thought maybe we should actually put it on device, get the extra mile, also open source it so others could just learn to use it as is, or build on top of it, hopefully. And that release, it's been very popular in this space. People are still sort of talking about how amazing it is that the whole thing is open. The model is fully open end-to-end all the way to the data. The app by itself and the inference code is also open, so people could actually sort of look at it and see and build upon it. But most importantly, what I'm hoping to do is this is just a very first step. I really would like the whole community to just jump on this and build on top of it, make it faster, make it better. And there's a lot more room for improvements as we think about the space of smaller on-device models that gives you the full privacy that you would like, being able to operate in that space. And it's kind of interesting to see that you could now run a model with 7 billion parameter capacity with these kinds of mixture of expert models with 1 billion active parameters. This is now doable. It doesn't kill your phone. And it just opens up a whole new approach and a whole new class of applications, in my opinion, when people build on top of those. We released the app not with the intent of let's just have yet another chat app. This is not the intent. Obviously, it's there for people to chat with it, but the goal is to just empower others to build on top of it and do what they want to do with it. And I'm confident that within a short period of time, we see so much building on top of that, or learning from it, redoing it, or building on top of it. And that's the significance of this release, in my opinion.
I'm learning all of this vocabulary as I go as well. So the MOE in OMO-E is, as you said, mixture of experts, and correct me on this, but my understanding is it's this whole idea of you have different components that have different specialties, much like you'd have a contractor build your house and a garbage collector pick up your trash, and you assign different tasks to these different components, these different experts as you go, and it becomes more efficient in that way?
That is accurate. So the way we think about it is that there are dense models. These are the standard models, like Olmo is a dense model, the classic Olmo. But there are mixtures of expert models. And those are a collection of smaller models, each of which are experts in a domain or few domains. And then there is an orchestrator that decides which combination of these models to call in, or one of them. Depends on how you architect it. The benefit is that you get the benefit of sparsity, because you don't need to fetch all the 7 billion parameters for every query that comes to you. So you can actually sort of fetch a subset. And that empowers you to use less memory. And that's a key part to be able to bring these models to device.
And all of these things, the new advances in reinforcement learning, the whole notion of mixture of experts, the shift toward smaller models, it seems like what you're seeing in the industry, I would imagine, is fewer and fewer resources required for greater and greater impact. Am I on the right track there?
Well, the way I think about it is that if you think about the evolution of technologies over time, they all follow the same trend. First, you show a thing is possible with the technology, and if it's valuable, then resources would shift into making it more efficient, making it faster, better, less expensive, etc. To the extent that that shiny thing becomes a commodity, and then the next shiny thing comes after it. So I think we're now in this space where we're going to see this year specifically a lot of efficiency improvements from these models. This technology stack has gotten to a place where you can now start systematically think about how to make things more efficient, how to make things more or less resource dependent. And we're going to see a lot more on these over the course of the year, I suspect. When you think about efficiency, there are also so many different aspects of this. These models are expensive from so many different from viewpoints. Parameter efficiency is the most common one people refer to. Instead of using 10 billion parameters, let's use half of it. And if you do that, things become less expensive. There's another key problem called data efficiency. To me, that problem is also as important. How much data do you need to be able to train these models or tune these models? And that has been another part of our efforts as we look back over 100 plus models that we released in 2024.
Really?
Yeah, it's actually, I was reporting to our board in January about last year, and we looked at it, 111 models. We released 111 models last year, which is quite phenomenal. 13 major releases of big models, starting from various different versions of Olmo to Molmo to Tulu, 2 versions of Tulu to Olmo-E, and so on. As part of Molmo release, one of the things that we showed was the data efficiency argument. By thinking about data in a different way, we actually showed that you could train a model better than other models by using 1/10,000th of the data. 1/10,000th. The comparison was with a model that was using 6 billion data points versus us using 700,000. And to me, these are great points because that opens up the door to more and more people to start playing in this game, making it more accessible. And the minute you actually unlock these barriers, I think that's the moment that you see innovations just flourish at a pace that we've never observed before. And those pieces are the pieces that are making us very, very confident that open source will win this game. Nothing can outpace it.
You're listening to my conversation this week with Ali Farhadi, CEO of the Allen Institute for AI. Coming up after the break, how AI could start to impact the world this year in an even more profound way. It's Todd Bishop, and I wanted to tell you about a favorite podcast of mine. It's called Booming, and it's a show that has opened my eyes to a whole range of things. Like what's really happening when I scan a digital coupon at the grocery store, and how robots are changing the construction of buildings in downtown Seattle, among many other topics. Booming is a podcast from KUOW Public Radio in Seattle. It's about the economic forces shaping our lives in the Pacific Northwest. It's co-hosted by reporters Joshua McNichols and Monica Nicholsberg. That's a familiar name and voice to longtime GeekWire readers and listeners. They answer questions that listeners are wondering about, like why are sports tickets so expensive? Or how hard should you actually work at work? Plus, every episode ends with a game. That's Booming from KUOW Public Radio. Find episodes on the KUOW app or wherever you get your podcasts. Let's get back now to my conversation with Ali Farhadi, CEO of the Allen Institute for AI. I asked about the larger meaning of the approach that AI2 is taking to projects like Olmo-E, the on-device app that was released by the nonprofit AI Institute this week. Olmo-E seems to be the continuation of a trend, at least my perception of it, in terms of AI2 and the fact that you're still doing core research. You're putting everything out there as open source, but at the same time, you're making it much more accessible and you're being much more public facing in terms of the ability to use these models in the form of chatbots or apps now.
Yeah. The way we think about this is that to us, success means empowering a whole community of global innovators to grab these technologies and solve a real problem. We have a large number of problems facing humanity today, and we argue that AI could make a contribution to solving those problems. We're not doing it today because of various different reasons. And to us, the two biggest part was being open and putting it out there. But then as part of last year, we learned that being open is not enough. We need to make things more accessible because these are complex systems. These are hard to deal with. Some of the big models, it's just even hard to run inference on them. Being able to sort of put also tools and solutions and apps and other artifacts out there that makes it easier for people to use these kind of technologies. But the dream for us is when these kind of technologies help solve a real problem. And that's where we are also, AI2 is also moving towards, to learn more about what it means to solve big problems in the world.
Fascinating. Okay, because I'll tell you, when I saw the Wall Street reaction and the whole notion of there being a DeepSeek moment, and I kept thinking to myself, why wasn't there an AI2 moment along the same way? And I asked you earlier if you were jealous of DeepSeek, and maybe that wasn't the right way to put it, but like, why hasn't there been an AI2 moment? Because it feels like, at least on that scale, you've been doing a lot of the fundamental things to get there, but it hasn't broken through globally in that same way.
Yeah. First of all, we're a nonprofit. We're not selling anything, or we're not hoping to increase our market value or market price. We are a science-driven institute after doing the right thing. So I would argue that AI2 had its own moments, but these things actually also happens by being in the right time, right place. There's so many other elements involved in this. We're after impact, making the world a better place with AI technologies. The moment that we're after is when a problem is solved. And this is what we're going after truly. The way we think about this is that for this year, for 2025 and beyond, what we're trying to do is we're trying to understand what does it mean to fill in the gap from a model to a solution. And that doesn't mean oftentimes, for at least most critical problems that are inherently hard problems, otherwise they would have been solved by now, to grab an off-the-shelf model and just apply it. The technology is not there.
Okay.
This turnkey concept, it works with chatbot and writing a poem to my grandma and a dancing pig on a stage. But if you're actually trying to solve a real problem, there's no turnkey solution. You actually have to be able to adapt one of these models, do it from scratch, tune it, and specialize it to solve a real problem. And as part of this year, we're trying to understand that whole space. And what does it mean to grab a model and make it special to a domain, or build a domain-specific model from scratch to solve a real problem?
Do you have a real problem in mind?
Yes. Last year, towards the end of last year, Fred Hutch announced a Cancer AI Alliance, We are the AI partner in that Cancer AI Alliance, trying to solve some of the problems that oncologists have in that whole space. Any step in the right direction in that space is going to be a risk worth taking. And that's the kind of impact that we're after. There's a lot of learning for us in that. We need to learn a lot about this domain and what technologies apply, what are the AI gaps, what are the problems that cannot be solved, what are the problems that can be solved. And that's going to be on our books for this year.
So if you look at the evolution here over the past year and a half or so, you've been going to each stage of the process, making sure that you're doing, the data, the pre-training, the post-training, all these things, and opening them up and really refining. And now it feels like in 2025, you're in a position to say, okay, not only have we turned this over to the community to do interesting things, but AI too, you're in a position to do something interesting on your own.
Exactly. So taking it a step further down the space of solutions, but also looking back at what the community is doing with our models is also phenomenal to watch. Because these models are truly open, this means that people could actually train these models from scratch on their own data. And different scientists in different domains have done that. This is sort of quite interesting for us to see that in astronomy, people are now using our code base to train astronomy models. Chemical scientists or chemists are doing the same thing. I was in the other part of the world just last week, and an engineer from an organization came to me with a laptop in their hand, showing that, hey, look, I actually sort of replicated all of your stuff, and I trained my model for my domain without even talking to you. So these are the moments that, when you talk about AI2 moments, these are the AI2 moments, making a real impact. And that's what we're after. We're going to continue to innovate in the whole stack, from data, models, post-training, pre-training, but also we're trying to learn about what it means to fill in the gap from a model to a solution.
If I could shorthand that, it's not so much taking 25% cut out of NVIDIA stock, it's about curing cancer.
Exactly. And those 25%, if it hasn't already came back, it will come back.
Well, on that point, I know I'm being somewhat tongue-in-cheek there, but have these overall trends in efficiency, and I think they're exemplified by DeepSeek, but clearly something that you've been doing for a long time, have they changed your expectation of the resources, the GPUs, the AI accelerators that are going to be required to achieve breakthroughs in the future?
Yeah. So first of all, one thing that came as part of this news hype or news moment was the notion that it's not that expensive to train these models. We've been saying this over and over the last year, that the expenses that are reporting are either the inference cost or business mode around just referring how expensive it is so no one else can get into the game. But they're not that expensive to train these models. And it was known, and I'm very happy with DeepSeek showing it that how expensive it is. Again, you have to be careful about what you measure and how you measure it and what's the total cost of training a model, not just the final hero run, but the whole space. But still, they're not that expensive. That's one key thing that came out of that. What efficiency means, or these kind of results means that we need less compute or the demand for compute shrinks. To me, is to the contrary. Anytime that any efficiency happens, this means that new domains, new use cases, new applications, new verticals, new models, new players in this space. And all of these things only mean one thing, which is more compute. And the majority of the compute is actually on the inference side, not the training side. And the minute you actually also make inference significantly cheaper, there's only one thing that came out of it: more and more application. So to me, it's quite to the contrary. And I've been saying it from the moment that this news came out, that if you can buy NVIDIA.
If you can buy NVIDIA.
Okay. No, buy NVIDIA stock, I mean.
Stock, right. No, I got you. One last little angle I wanted to ask you about. Obviously, AI2 has been a nonprofit for years. There was another big nonprofit that sort of still exists in OpenAI. When you look at the whole drama going on there about the potential conversion to a for-profit entity, and it's a mess. But when you look at that as a nonprofit leader yourself, what's your perspective on all of that, and how does it make you reflect upon what you're doing at AI2?
Yeah, oftentimes I make a joke when I introduce AI2. We are the nonprofit kind of nonprofits. As you said, it's a complicated space. I think maneuvering the space of possibilities, the legal implications, the business implications, are quite interesting to watch. We're watching it as other folks are doing so.
Okay, so just another little bit of history. AI2 had the AI2 incubator as part of the organization for many years. This was the startup incubator and is a startup incubator, and it was part of AI2, but it spun off in 2022 independent on its own. Talk me through that.
Yeah, I think as part of our commitment to our nonprofit status, AI2, this predates me. AI2 leadership decided to sort of carve out AI2 incubator to be its own incubator, just like any other incubators out there.
It's not directly affiliated with the Allen Institute for AI.
Not anymore.
I've gotten phone calls from people who have been confused about some of my AI2 and Allen Institute for AI language in my stories. I'm wondering, is there a thought of rebranding one or the other to avoid the confusion about the affiliation?
Fair point. The namings are a little confusing, and I think Incubator needed the branding to be able to carry their business, and that's sort of why the branding stays.
Yeah, understood. Big picture, what is the Pacific Northwest's competitive position in AI, if you could think about it that way? Or is that even a question you would think about?
Oftentimes, I tend to think about these problems on a global scale, not local regions, but Pacific Northwest has been a great hub. I think talent would remain a key characteristic of this area, but also the tight ecosystem between UW, AI2, our sister institute, the Allen Institute, Fred Hutch, Amazon, Microsoft, and now Apple and Google, and all of them have a strong presence here. One of the key benefits and power of this region is these fluid structures that enables us to actually tightly integrate independent institutes together. A hallmark of that, in my opinion, is UW AI2 relationships. And I'm not the only person here that wears two hats. There are a few other key researchers who are also doing the same thing. That is only good for the region, for the topic, for the area, and for both institutes. I think we had a cloud moment. This was a great moment, and I believe we have been in the AI moment for the Pacific Northwest for a while.
Big picture in the industry, what are the key trends you're going to be watching in 2025?
Efficiency is one that I'm really watching closely. The space of agents is another one that's quite fascinating to watch. Depends on what you call an agent and what they do and what they cannot do. And opening up that whole stack is another thing that we're after. And the third piece is AI solving real problems. That's what I'm sort of excited about and hope to see a lot more of this year.
Well, Ali, thank you very much for sitting down with me.
It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for your time.
Ali Farhadi is CEO of the Allen Institute for Artificial Intelligence, also known as AI2. You can see the show notes for links to their projects and everything else we talked about, including GeekWire's coverage of their most recent news. Thanks for listening. I'm GeekWire co-founder Todd Bishop. We'll be back next week with a new episode of the GeekWire podcast.